Welcome, weary. Tonight, we embark on a quiet journey not to lands of grandeur, but to the narrow alleys and echoing tenements of Victorian slums. This is not a tale of empire or royalty, but a long, slow walk through soot-covered doorsteps into dimly lit rooms. And beside those whose names never appeared in the history books, for the next 2 hours, allow yourself to drift gently into the past, where daily life moved at the pace of footsteps on cobblestones, and sleep came softly to those who could find it. Let your mind slow. Let the quiet details unfold. Imagine yourself waking up to the sound of boots scuffing against damp cobblestones. It's early morning, but the sky is already cloaked in a heavy, soot-stained grey. You are in Whitechapel, East London roughly, the year 1874. The air smells of coal smoke, sour bread, and the faint, always present temps of sewage. You sleep in a single room with 6 others, your mother, 3 siblings, and 2 boarders your family barely knows. The room is narrow and dark. The walls weep with moisture. Mold creeps in from every corner, and the floor beneath your thin mattress is warped from decades of leaks and the tread of countless boots. Your clothes are the same ones you wore yesterday and every day before that. A threadbare shirt, stiff with grime, a woolen skirt, or a pair of trousers, now 2 sizes too small, holes worn into the knees. You pull your feet from under the thin blanket and slide into boots that don't match. One is your brother's, the other was found in the street. The building creaks as people move about, climbing down rickety staircases, stepping over puddles from leaking roofs. You can hear the groan of a neighbor's infant, a cough from below, a bucket splashing out a window the morning's waste, tossed into the street to join yesterday's. There's no running water, no toilet. The lavatory, if it can be called that, is a shared privy for doors down, choked with newspaper and half buried in cold mud. You learn early to avoid it at night. Breakfast, if you're lucky, is a heel of dry bread, perhaps a splash of weak tea, heavily sugared to mask the bitterness. Your mother doles it out carefully. Every crumb matters. Hunger is familiar, now sharp, but predictable, the kind that clings to your ribs and dulls your senses until it becomes part of you. You're 8 years old enough to work. Some mornings, you walk to the rag shop with your sister. There, you sort scraps, wool, cotton, burlap by texture, by weight, by what might be salvageable. It's cold, and your fingers ache from the damp. The man who owns the shop watches you like a cat watches a mouse, not with affection, but with the expectation that you might bolt or break something. On other days, you pick oakum, unraveling old rope so it can be reused in ship caulking. You pull the coarse strands apart with your bare hands, sometimes until they bleed. The fibers work their way beneath your nails, and the rhythm of the work lulls you into a stupor. Outside, the alleys are slick with filth, horse droppings, decayed produce, and the spillover of chamber pots blend into a sludge that coats your boots. Rats are common. They dart between rubbish piles and across doorways. You're taught not to fear them too much. Sometimes they bite, but mostly they scurry and vanish. At midday, a man with a barrel cart comes down the street, selling eels, jellied, boiled, still twitching. Sometimes they're cheap protein. Children chase after him with halfpennies or trade scraps of metal. You watch from a stoop and chew on a scrap of cloth to stop your stomach from growling. The noise is constant, vendors shouting, babies crying, tin pails clanging, women gossiping through open windows. You get used to it. You stop noticing the smell after a while, too. Mostly, by late afternoon, your hands are red and raw. Your head aches from cold smoke. School is a rumor, a luxury for others. You've heard of children who go, but you don't know any personally. Instead, You learn to listen, to count coin by sound and feel, to recognize the tread of constables and the hush that falls when something dangerous is near. You learn to be small, to move quickly, to carry your weight in silence, and when evening comes, your family huddles close in the single room. A candle burns low, the wind slips through broken window panes, and you share body heat beneath layered coats and old shawls. Outside, someone is shouting, then a door slams, then silence again. You sleep with one eye open, one ear tuned to the sound of the stairs. The past is heavy here, pressing in from all sides, but the rhythm of their lives, though harsh, was steady, predictable in its hardship, constant in its struggle. Now, shift your focus away from the gutters and grime for a moment. Let's follow the footsteps of a man who walked the same streets not in rags, but in polished shoes. His name was Charles Booth. Born into comfort in Liverpool in 1840, Charles Booth did not grow up in the world of soot-choked alleys and overflowing tenements. He inherited a leather business and wealth enough to step back from commerce while still young. But he wasn't content with numbers and ledgers. What he wanted, what obsessed him was understanding the reality of poverty in London, not the stories told in drawing rooms, not the assumptions of politicians. The truth. In the 1880s, he began a project so vast and meticulous that even the government took notice. He wanted to map the entirety of working-class life in the capital, to walk every street, record every trade, and classify every household. His team was small but diligent. They took to the streets, often accompanied by off-duty policemen, and began their slow, deliberate documentation. The result would become one of the most detailed social surveys in British history. Life and labour of the people in London. Booth and his team walked the neighbourhoods of Whitechapel, Lambeth, Bermondsey areas. Most of polite society preferred not to think about. They recorded not just who lived where, but what they did, how they survived, what rent they paid, and even whether they sent their children to school. Each home was colour-coded. Yellow for the well-to-do, pink for the comfortable, blue for the struggling, black for the destitute. The darker streets were labelled a quiet euphemism that whispered of theft, sex work, and hunger-fueled desperation. Booth was not without bias. At times, he misread what he saw through the lens of his own class, but he listened, he looked, and crucially, he believed the poor were not poor because they were lazy, but because their lives were structured to keep them that way. His maps are strange to look at. No soft pastel shades, interlaced with streaks of black like bruises on paper. They do not yell. They do not dramatize. But they show, plainly and quietly, just how deeply hardship was embedded in the bones of the city. One of Booth's greatest contributions was the recognition of what he called the deserving and undeserving poor as a false distinction. He saw that women scraping by on laundry work, children hauling coal, and families sleeping for two a bed were all trying to maintain a kind of dignity in the face of unrelenting pressure. He attended workhouses. He spoke with factory owners. He spent time in places where men broke stones for food and children stitched matchboxes by candlelight, and he took notes, dozens of notebooks, hundreds of pages, street by street, life by life. In his own restrained, mathematical way, Charles Booth saw the slums not as failures of individual character, but of collective policy and social structure. His maps became tools not for charity, but for change. Parliament read them, reformers used them, and the shape of urban Britain began, slowly, to shift. He died in 1916, just shy of seeing the modern welfare state take root, but his work laid the foundation. So now, as you picture the cold stones of Whitechapel beneath your imagined feet, Know that someone once walked there not with fear or indifference but with purpose, measuring misery, not to explain it away, but to make sure it could never again be ignored. And with that, let us step quietly back into the fog, not into policy but into the unknown, the strange, the lost. The Thames flows endlessly through the city, wide and slow, its surface often cloaked in mist. In the Victorian era, it was both lifeblood and grave. Commerce floated along its back, so did bonds. They were called the Thames men, drowned souls pulled from the water's edge, week after week. Most wore the clothes of labourers. Some bore the faded remnants of a uniform. Others were barefoot, their pockets turned out, their identities never recovered. In the quiet hours of the morning, lightermen and dock workers would sometimes find them caught among the pilings, pale hands reaching up through the brown water, a boot snagged on a mooring line, a hat drifting like a shadow just beneath the surface. The official verdict was often the same: accidental drowning, a tragic fall, a man drunk, a misstep on a foggy dock, a slip from the gangway of a ferry. The Thames took what it would, it always had. But over time, questions began to whisper through the alleys and pubs of London's East End. Why were so many of the dead young men healthy and recently employed? Why did several carry odd bruises, barely noted in the coroner's ledger? Why were so many pockets empty, their wages missing? The river police were overworked. Their reports were terse. There were no proper forensic procedures, no photographs, no thorough follow-ups, just namesif. There were names and a short line in the local paper: man found in Thames. No foul play suspected. Among the poor, rumours bloomed that there were gangs who targeted lone men for their wages, that sailors on leave were followed from docks to alehouses, slipped a dose of laudanum, and rolled into the river. Some spoke of foul play among employers' debt collectors, who made examples of those who failed to pay. And then, of course, there was the fear of something darker, an idea that surfaced in late-night conversations and quickly disappeared by morning light, that certain slum landlords, keen to clear out the elderly or sick who could no longer pay rent, might arrange for a quiet removal. That disappearances were not just accidents but solutions. There is no proof, no ledger, no confession, only the rhythm of the tide. From 1860 to 1900, hundreds of unnamed bodies were retrieved from the Thames. Most were never identified. They were buried in public graves. The dirt closed over them as the river kept flowing. And even now, long after the slums have been swept away and the warehouses converted to glass apartments, the Thames still yields its secrets. Every few years, a walker finds bones on a muddy bank, a jaw, a single shoe. The river does not forget, it only waits. So, the next time you imagine yourself along the banks of Victorian London, picture the stillness of the early morning fog, the creak of moored barges, and the quiet splash of the water brushing up against the stone somewhere beneath that surface. History drifts. Let us now step away from the unknown, from the chill of the river, and into a different kind of evening, one lit by gas lamps, and filled with the gentle clink of fine china. Let the atmosphere shift softly, steadily. We drift now, not forward, but upward, into a different tier of the same world. Now, imagine yourself seated not on a cracked stoop or a shared mattress but in a drawing room lined with dark wood panels and tall, polished mirrors. The house stands in Manchester's wealthiest district, not far from the city centre, but far indeed from the slums that stretch outward like soot-covered roots. The year is 1872. You are a guest, perhaps distantly related, perhaps simply convenient. Your shoes are cleaned for you. Your hands do not ache from labour. Your presence here is expected, but your thoughts are your own. Dinner will be served soon. Upstairs, Servants move quickly and quietly, straightening place settings, adjusting the napkin folds, and lighting the last of the gas lamps that cast a warm amber glow over everything. The flicker of those lamps reflects on silver and porcelain, each piece chosen with care, arranged just so. You descend the stairs slowly. A maid opens the double doors to the dining room with a soft rustle of linen. Inside, the long table is laid for 12. The tablecloth is crisp and white. Each plate bears the family crest. The smell is not of coal or fish or boiling cabbage but of nutmeg, seared butter, and roasted game. A butler calls your name in a whisper. The host nods graciously. Polite conversation begins. Immediately, quiet, clipped, rhythmic. Recent investments. The possibility of expanding the railway. A newly discovered Greek sculpture on exhibit in London. No one mentions the weather. No one mentions Whitechapel. The first course is served. A delicates in fine china bowls, garnished with slivers of leek and celery root. It's clear, fragrant, and impossibly light. Then follows a platter of roasted swan, its skin bronzed, the aroma sharp and unfamiliar. Swan is not common, even here. This bird was procured specially, likely through a private contact, likely from someone with the right to kill and serve it. The meat is dark and slightly gamey. It tastes of river and smoke. There is silence as you eat, punctuated only by the soft clink of forks on porcelain. No one rushes. Each bite is savored. Plates are cleared before they are empty. That's the custom. Next comes a vegetable course: artichokes with butter, potatoes layered in cream, a pie filled with pigeon and mushrooms, then a sweet pear tart glazed with quince syrup, alongside syllabub, whipped and airy. After dinner, the men retreat to the smoking room, the women to the parlour. There is brandy and port. A thin stream of music drifts in from a hired violinist tucked into a corner. No one here smells of sweat or dust. No one has walked more than a few hundred feet all day. The conversation is light, but guarded. One does not speak openly of business here. This is not the floor for that. That happens elsewhere. By 9 o'clock, lamps are dimmed. The fire burns low. A few guests prepare to leave, their carriages waiting outside with flickering lanterns. The sound of hooves on cobblestone is gentle, measured, even soothing. You retire to a guest chamber. The sheets are warm, the air faintly perfumed. Outside the window, you can just see the glow of the city, distant, hazy. You know what lies in that darkness. But here, inside, it is quiet, safe, still. For the elite of Manchester, life was comfortable, contained, carefully managed. The filth and noise of the industrial city were necessary but never nearby. The poor existed. Everyone knew this. But they were abstract, part of a separate rhythm, one that never touched the dinner table. And so we return, slowly, to the street, back to the clatter, the grime, the struggle, but the contrast lingers quiet, persistent, like the aftertaste of rich wine. Sink gently now back into the rhythm of work, monotonous, physical, unending. The world of the slum returns not in drama, but in repetition. Imagine yourself waking not to an alarm, but to the bray of a mule and the rumble of cartwheels echoing down a narrow lane. It's just after dawn, and the sky is low and colourless. The air carries the sour scent of turned earth and coal smoke. You are a ragand bone man, or perhaps, more precisely, a boy. Your cart is wooden, with one cracked wheel that wobbles and groans with each turn. Its boards are splintered, patched with rusted nails. Tied to its front is a donkey with one ear torn and blind in one eye. He walks when prodded. He stops when he likes. You've named him nothing. You carry with you a sack and a long stick tipped with a metal hook. Some days you also carry a smaller bag slung across your back, though its contents are never heavy, not for long. Your job is simple. Walk the streets, call out in a rhythmic chant, rags and bones. Any old iron, any bottles? Again and again, block by block, you move through alleys, past factories, behind tenements. People recognize your call before they see you. A door opens. A child appears with an empty flask. A man tosses down a worn-out boot. You nod. Take the items. Thank them in a whisper and move on. Your earnings come from resale. Rags assorted by material. Cotton is for paper mills, wool for stuffing, linen for bandages. Bones are boiled down for glue or crushed for fertilizer. Iron fetches more, but it's heavier. You walk for hours with your body bowed beneath the weight of forgotten things. Sometimes you stop to dig through the refuse piles behind bakeries or under market stalls. Spoiled vegetables, moldy bread, broken dishes. If you find a copper spoon or a shoe with half a sole, it's a good morning. By midday, your hands are slick with grease and ash. Your boots squelch in the alleys. You've stopped noticing the smell of your own sweat. Your coat, patched a dozen times over, stiffens as it dries. Your stomach growls. You pull a crust from your pocket and chew slowly. The street kids mock you, sometimes call you Bone Man, Crust Boy, Rat Cart. You ignore them. You're used to being invisible until someone wants to laugh. Around the edges of the city, you sometimes wander near the abattoirs. The air is metallic and dense. You don't linger. There's little there for you. But behind the glue factories, the heaps are rich. You wear a rag over your face. It doesn't help much. Still, you sift, and you wait, and you hope. By late afternoon, your cart is half full. Your legs ache. Your back stiffens. You hear church bells. In the distance, muffled by fog, but still clear, somewhere far from here, candles are being lit in parlors. But your day isn't done. You make your way to a junk dealer. He inspects your haul with thick fingers and indifferent eyes. He lifts the sack, weighs it, says a number. It's never as much as you hoped. It never is. You nod, take your coin, and leave. Sometimes you buy a meat pie from a street stall. Sometimes just tea. You sit on the curb and let the steam rise to your face, letting the heat wash away the damp. And then, as the sky darkens and the gas lamps flicker to life, you lead your donkey back to the narrow stable where he sleeps. You brush him down with your sleeve. You feed him old carrots and a crust. He chews slowly, eyes dull but calm. You climb the stairs to your room. It's no warmer than the street. You sleep with your coat on, boots by your side. And tomorrow you'll walk the same streets, call the same chant, carry other people's scraps, the rhythm of their lives, a steady thrum. Repetition as survival, work without end, and silence without comfort. Now we turn from the endless rhythm of labor to a moment of resistance, subtle, determined, and soft-spoken. No riots, no guns, just young women standing still when everyone expected them to keep bending. In the summer of 1888, the streets outside the Bryant and Maymatch factory in East London were unusually still. Inside the red brick complex at Bow, the air was thick with heat, dust, and something far worse, phosphorus. This was where the match girls worked. Imagine yourself as one of them, 14, maybe 15. You work 6 days a week, often 12 to 14 hours each day. You sit at a long bench, dipping matchsticks into yellow phosphorus, one by one, until your hands cramp and your fingernails burn. Your fingers are always sticky. Your skin breaks out in rashes. Some of the older girls have a sickly smell about them, faint but distinct. You've heard stories, whispers about something called phossy jaw, a sickness that starts with toothache, then swelling, then bone that turns soft and black and crumbles away. The bosses don't talk about it. Neither do the overseers. But the stories travel faster than matches catch fire. You earn a few shillings a week. From that, your cost of glue and thread is deducted. So are fines for talking, for dropping a match, for being late, for coughing. There's always a reason. But in July of 1888, the match girls did something no one expected. They stopped. It began when a young woman never officially named was dismissed for speaking to a journalist about conditions inside the factory. Her co-workers, rather than letting it pass, stood up, refused to work. One by one, more than 1,400 girls and young women walked out of the factory. They were not unionized. They had no legal backing. Many could not read or write, but they had each other. Their protest was not loud. They stood quietly outside the gates. They wrote letters. They walked to Parliament and delivered petitions. The newspapers picked up the story not because it was dramatic, but because it was undeniable. The public took notice. A social reformer named Annie Besant supported them. She printed pamphlets, arranged interviews, and helped bring their grievances to a broader audience. The factory owners responded with silence at first, but the girls did not return. After several weeks, under pressure and growing scrutiny, the company relented. The woman who had been dismissed was reinstated. Fines were reconsidered. Conditions gradually began to improve. It was not a revolution. It was not a sweeping change, but it was something rare. Poor, working-class women refusing to suffer in silence. A match girl's hands were small, calloused, and burned, but they could still draw a line. Many of those girls faded back into the rhythm of the city, their names unrecorded. But for a few short weeks, they held the line in a world that had never expected them to speak. So, as you walk now through the imagined haze of a London factory street, you might pause not for the building, or the bosses, or the product, but for the quiet defiance of a girl with raw fingers who simply refused. And from sparks to ash, from resistance to silence we shift again, this time into the unknowable, into the strange. We drift now, slowly down, beneath the street, beneath the soot, into the silent chambers beneath a city that has never truly slept, beneath the narrow streets of just east of the old city walls. There lies a forgotten network of underground vaults, not catacombs, not grand tunnels, but low, cramped cellars and bricked-over basements. In the Victorian age, many of these were already ancient, their original purposes long lost to time. Imagine descending into one of these spaces. A stone stairway, slick with condensation, the air thick, unmoving, touched by mildew and the faint scent of coal. The only light is the small lantern in your hand, its glow revealing just enough to feel uneasy. The vaults beneath Clockenwell were once used as storage spaces for wine, spirits, sometimes weapons, but as London grew, and rent rose, and space vanished, these subterranean hollows took on a new purpose. They became homes, not official homes, not places with addresses or permits or even locks, but spaces where the poorest of the poor might find shelter, cold, damp, and silent as they were. Some of the vaults had been bricked in and forgotten, until a family with nowhere else to go would pull away the rubble and slip inside. Others were sublet illegally by landlords who would never set foot inside themselves. There are stories, quiet, unverified, of entire families living in these vaults, children born underground, never once seeing the open sky. Bread baked over candle flames, rats that learned to fear neither humans nor hunger, voices echoing through stone chambers where monks once walked. One such vault discovered during sewer expansion in the 1870s, held traces of habitation. A rusted kettle, an iron bed frame, remnants of a child's boot. No names, no records, just things left behind. And always, the silence. Historians are cautious about such places. Documentation is sparse. Most who lived in them never wrote letters, never appeared in censuses. But their presence is felt in the gaps in the patterns of sickness, in the records of parish aid, in the sudden absences of names that once appeared on ragged rent rolls. What these vaults offer isn't a mystery in the modern sense, no haunting crimes or buried gold, but something deeper. A quiet void, an entire layer of life removed from sunlight, scrubbed from polite society, and allowed to vanish beneath layers of brick and memory. Some of the spaces were later converted, turned into wine bars, or boiler rooms, or forgotten again behind padlocked iron doors. But a few remain untouched, sealed in dampness, still. And so, if you ever walk through Clockenwell in the early morning fog, you might pause beside an old stone wall and wonder what lies beneath. Not in a thrill-seeking way, but in the slow, heavy realization that below your feet, people once lived entire lives and left behind nothing but cold stone and the faint scent of damp ash. From the depths of the city, we rise once more, into rooms with heat, with light, with laughter, soft and practiced. Let us drift upward into contrast. Let us settle now into calm conversation, the quiet murmur of well-dressed men, insulated from soot, their voices softened by thick carpets and cigar smoke. You are in Pall Mall, in the heart of London's clubland. It is late afternoon, the streets are still with the hush of early evening. No carriages rush, no vendors shout. The air here feels lighter somehow, clean. You step inside the Reform Club. Founded in 1836, the Reform Club is one of the great gentlemen's clubs of the city, a place where liberal-minded statesmen, industrialists, and explorers gather not to work, but to pause, to reflect, to be seen, without being too loud about it. The foyer is vast. The walls are lined with dark walnut and panelled with mirrors to catch the gaslight at flattering angles. You pass beneath a high coffered ceiling, footsteps swallowed by a deep red carpet woven in France. A porter nods, takes your coat, says nothing. Inside, the club is quiet. The clink of silver spoons against china, the low murmur of conversation, the faint, almost imperceptible scratch of pen on ledger as a clerk tallies brandy costs. You're led into the morning room. There, on velvet chairs, sit men of means. A member of Parliament discusses tariffs over lemon cake. A shipping magnate complains softly of the French. A retired colonial officer leafs through a newspaper, pausing now and then to comment, never too loudly, on affairs in India. Tea is served in delicate porcelain, not slum tea, thick with chalk and brewed from third-hand leaves. This tea is Darjeeling, pale, fragrant, accompanied by thin slices of cucumber on buttered bread, everything trimmed just so. The windows overlook a garden that few use but all admire, a controlled green space, walled off from the world beyond. Somewhere in the distance, a clock chimes 5 times. No one acknowledges it. Conversation turns to philanthropy. One man mentions the match girls with a furrowed brow and a distant tone. Another raises the issue of housing reform, then sags quickly into a story about an acquaintance purchasing a villa in Nice. These men are not heartless, not cruel. They give to charities, sign petitions, attend lectures, but their world does not intersect with that of Clockenwell or Lambeth. It floats above it, buoyed by investments and insulated by footmen. There are no smells here beyond tobacco and lavender. No blisters, no mold, no rust. The cutlery gleams, The linen is starched. Even the fireplace ash is brushed away before it can settle. You sip your tea. It's warm, slightly sweet. A waiter appears with more. He says nothing, but sees everything. In the Reform Club, one need not rush. The pace of time itself seems too slow, as if out of respect. Men cross their legs, adjust their waistcoats, and continue speaking in a rhythm that suggests the world outside the real world will wait for them to finish. It always has. And when you finally stand, thank the steward, and leave through the great wooden doors, the city is there again. Louder, dirtier, closer, but for a few hours you are suspended above it, all in a bubble of warmth, tradition, and curated calm. Let us slip now once more into the narrow lanes, into soot and sound and shoulder-to-shoulder struggle. There is more to see and more to endure. The work returns. The heat rises. And so we follow the day of a girl with blistered fingers and a schedule measured not in hours, but in bundles. You begin before the sun rises. In Spitalfields, the morning doesn't break so much as seep in slowly, through cracked shutters and the thick smear of chimney smoke clinging to the air. You're 13. You've been working for 2 years already. You pull your sleeves up, bind your hair with a piece of rag, and step into the laundry yard. The cobblestones are slick, black with old soap. Steam curls upward from a row of great copper vats, already simmering. The fire beneath each one stoked since before dawn. Your job is simple. Wash, wring, scrub, haul, then repeat. Your hands are never dry. The skin on your knuckles is permanently creased, red and raw. You keep them moving anyway. A pause means cold. A pause means less finished. A pause means someone else might get your place. The bundles arrive in wicker baskets. Shirts from shops, aprons from taverns, linens from wealthier homes you'll never see. Everything is grey, not from colour, but from time and water and grime. The soap is hard and lie heavy. It stings when it touches skin. You work beside other girls, none much older than yourself. Conversation is minimal. The work leaves little breath. You scrub until your wrists burn. The washboard is splintered. The bucket's too heavy. You haul wet cloth up to the lines where it sags and drips and freezes in winter. If you're lucky, you're paid by the piece. On good days, you earn 7 pence. On bad days, 3. There are breaks but short ones. You crouch by a wall and eat whatever's been brought from home. Usually a heel of bread, sometimes a slice of potato. You chew slowly, watching the steam rise around you like smoke in a battlefield. The heat from the vats is a blessing in winter, a curse in summer. Sometimes the ironers pass by older women, lean and quiet. They move quickly, arms strong from years at the press. You wonder if you'll make it to their age. Most laundry girls don't. Back injuries, chest infections, and scalds take many out of the trade long before 30. Still, you work. Because it's work. Because there are no choices. Because your family needs the coin. At the end of the day, your arms are leaden. Your boots squelch with moisture. You scrape soap from your skin with an old spoon. You slip a coin into your pocket, careful not to lose it. You whisper a good night to the girl who works beside you. Her name is Mary. She hasn't spoken in 2 days. You don't ask why. The streets are darker now. Your walk home is slow. Past men shouting outside a pub. Past a boy asleep under a stairwell. Past a mother with twins in her arms, rocking one while the other wails. When you reach your door, your fingers tremble too much to undo the latch. Someone opens it for you. You nod in thanks. Words are too heavy now. Inside, The room smells of boiled cabbage and wet wool. You crawl onto the pallet in the corner, still in your work dress. You'll close your eyes, and tomorrow you'll wash again. There is dignity in the doing, even when no one sees it. The rhythm of labor may wear the body, but it steals the soul. And so the cycle continues. Let us shift now not away from hardship, but into the act of witnessing. Some walked the slums with pens in their pockets instead of bread, and what they wrote remains, like echoes trapped in paper. In 1849, a man named Henry Mayhew published the first volume of what would become one of the most exhaustive social documents of the 19th century. Its title was Long London Labour and the London Poor, but its purpose was simple: to show the world what the slums truly were. Mayhew was not a politician, he was not rich, and not particularly well-connected. He was a journalist, curious and persistent. He had an ear for voices and a mind for numbers. And above all, he had time. He spent years walking the alleys of London's East End. Not as a reformer, not as a philanthropist, but as a recorder. He listened. He spoke with costermongers who sold apples from barrows, with chimney sweeps still streaked with soot, with old women who stitched bonnets from discarded fabric, with thieves, match-girls, rat-catchers, mudlarks, beggars, and crossing-sweepers. His method was slow, conversational, and strangely intimate. He transcribed the words of the poor with a precision that was rare for the time. Their dialects, hesitations, even their phrases were captured as spoken. He wanted them to be heard, not just seen. His notebooks filled quickly. Each entry became part of a vast tapestry, each voice a thread in a story that no one had bothered to tell before. Mayhew didn't shy away from detail. He listed average incomes, types of goods sold, the price of eels per pound on different corners of the city. He broke down how much a mudlark could expect to earn in a week, and how long a rat-catcher's ferrets lived. But he also described smells, sounds, the rhythm of a day, the pressure behind the eyes of a father who couldn't find work, the silence of a child staring too long at a baker's window. What made his work remarkable was its restraint. There is pity, yes, but rarely sentimentality. He did not weep over the poor, he listened to them, and that was rarer than it should have been. His writing reached the middle and upper classes, people who had never set foot in the places he described. For many, his work was the first time they'd read the words of a slum resident, unfiltered and uninterpreted. Of course, there were critics. Some said he was too soft, others too clinical, but Mayhew was not interested in changing minds through argument. He let the voices speak for themselves. One man he interviewed said, "We don't want saving, we want bread." Mayhew printed it exactly like that, and over time, his words began to ripple outward. Reformers read him, clergymen quoted him. Even city planners began to consider the reality he died quietly in 1887. No statue was raised, no plaque marked his favorite bench, but his pages remained, thousands of them stacked with the lives of people who would otherwise have disappeared into soot and silence. So when you picture a street in Shoreditch or Bethnal Green, when you imagine a vendor's cry or a child's cold fingers, know that Mayhew was there, standing a few feet away, listening and writing it all down. The act of bearing witness is its own kind of labor, quiet, observant, persistent. Let us now leave the page and return once more to the sounds of work, of scraping, clanging, and the hiss of heat. We return now to the floor. Two tools worn smooth from use, to work done by hand, by heat, and by habit. No glory, no invention. Just the slow shaping of metal, one clang at a time. The day begins with the sound of hammer on tin. It is not loud, not at first, just a tap, then another, then a rhythm begins steady, persistent, a workshop in Bethnal Green, barely wider than a cart, where 4 men and 1 boy sit bent over sheets of metal. You are the boy. You started as a runner, fetching coal, fetching water, fetching whatever your uncle barked at you to find. Now you have a small hammer of your own, and a bench to sit at, and a pile of scrap waiting to be turned into something useful. Cups, lantern plates, cooking tins. The room is warm in winter, stifling in summer. There's no chimney, only a cracked window near the ceiling. The air hangs thick with coal smoke, iron filings, and the ever-present scent of solder acidic and clinging. Your shirt sticks to your back, your hands are already blackened, despite washing them at dawn. You hold the tin sheet steady with 1 foot, bend it with a worn tool, and hammer the seam flat. Then again, by mid-morning, the room is a chorus of metallic whispers, each man working his own rhythm, his own part. The eldest hums through his teeth. The apprentice curses softly when his tin slips. Your hammer blisters ache, but you don't say a word. You just keep tapping. Lunch is brief. Cold tea, bread with drippings, sometimes a slice of cheese gone stiff at the edges. You eat with your hands, wipe your mouth with your sleeve, and get back to work. The boss doesn't speak unless something breaks. He inspects your solder seams without a word. If they're poor, you'll hear the metal hit the floor and know to start over. The work is not creative. You are not an inventor. You are a pair of hands in a line of hands. The city needs tin, and someone must shape it. Occasionally, a stranger enters, someone from farther west seeking a special order. A watering can with a long spout, a custom pot lid. They speak quickly, avoid eye contact, and leave with their gloves still on. By late afternoon, the air is thick enough to cut. The sun glows faintly through the Sut Street glass. The youngest apprentice is dozing in his corner, chin resting on folded arms. No one wakes him. He'll pay for it in extra work tomorrow. As the day winds down, you wipe your tools clean with a rag soaked in spirits. You place them in a box lined with cloth, not out of luxury, but necessity. Tools are expensive, and they last only as long as you treat them well. The fire dims, the hammers slow, one by one. The workers file out into the dimming street. You follow, blinking against the pale, cold light. Bethnal Green is loud. Now boys playing, men shouting, a woman singing in a language you don't know, but your ears are still ringing from the shop. It takes a few minutes before you can hear anything clearly. You sleep in the same clothes you worked in, the scent of tin and coal and skin all blended into a kind of daily perfume. It stays with you even in dreams. And tomorrow you'll hammer again. The rhythm continues. The work does not stop. But now let us pull back not into silence, but into ritual, into what lies beneath the surface of the ordinary. When belief and tradition mix with struggle, let us now explore what lingers on the edges of every slum life. Not just poverty, not just labor, but the quiet, heavy presence of death and the lengths people went to for one last shred of dignity. In the cramped rows of East London's slums, the threat of death was never far. It came by way of infection, accident, cold, or simple exhaustion. For the poor, dying was not the fear. Being buried improperly was, and so emerged a peculiar institution, one both heartbreaking and deeply practical, the burial club. Imagine yourself sitting in a tenement room lit by a single taper. A small tin box sits on the shelf, your family's burial club bank. You contribute to it weekly, if you can. A penny here, two there. You scrape it together, even if it means thinner porridge or one less candle for light. Burial clubs operated much like insurance. Though they bore little resemblance to the polished firms of the West Side, they were organized by neighbors, sometimes through churches, often through small associations. The rules were strict. You pay every week, without fail, and in return, should you or more often, your child, the club would provide enough funds for a modest but proper burial, a coffin, a short procession, a spot in the common ground, maybe even a marker, if the funds permitted. It was not luxury, but it was dignity, and for families who had endured years of crowding, filth, and hunger, the idea of a clean, honorable end was sacred. Some clubs were legitimate, others less so. There were scandals, treasurers disappearing with funds, undertakers colluding to inflate costs. But for most, these clubs were lifelines, quiet promises in copper coin. For mothers in particular, the clubs offered a kind of weary peace. Infant mortality was high, astoundingly so. In some East End neighborhoods, 1 in 4 children did not survive to their 5th birthday. Disease spread fast in the damp and the dark, and when it came, there was no question more urgent than how to pay for the small, solemn box that would carry them away. Sometimes, families enrolled children almost immediately after birth, not out of morbid planning, but because they could not risk being caught unprepared. The club books kept in careful copperplate would list names, ages, and dates of admission, sometimes before a child had even been named. There were tales whispered of fraud, of mothers enrolling multiple clubs to claim more than one payout, of children who died suddenly under suspicious circumstances, but these were rare and often exaggerated by those looking to shame the poor. The truth was far simpler. For the slum dweller, a proper burial was not just about grief. It was about reputation, respect, honor in a world that offered so little of it. And so, each week, the pennies were tucked into jars, delivered by hand, marked off in ledgers. Some families kept the burial money separate from all other coins, hidden under tied-in handkerchiefs, tucked behind family portraits. Because, in a life where the future was never promised, and comfort seldom came, the final ritual mattered, and the burial club, silent and steadfast, waited. Let us now climb again, out of death, into life shaped by privilege, into rooms where such worries were unimaginable, where mourning was observed, not in fear, but in fine fabric and elaborate decorum. We rise now into a different kind of grief, controlled, observed, almost theatrical. Grief as performance, as ritual, as social duty. In the quiet rooms of the privileged, even sorrow follows the rules. Imagine now a home in Kensington, a townhouse, 3 stories tall, its brickwork pale and clean, its windows recently washed. The curtains are drawn not because the family sleeps, but because the master of the house has died. And for the next 12 months, everything will be different. You enter through a polished door painted in dark green. The maid opens it, her uniform crisp, her hair tucked neatly under a lace cap. Inside, the air smells faintly of lavender and old wood. The gas lights are dimmed. A black band of crepe has been tied around the brass doorknob. This is a mourning house. The front parlor, once used for receiving visitors and serving tea, has been transformed. Heavy velvet drapes block out the sunlight. The mirrors have been covered in dark cloth, an old superstition said to prevent the soul of the deceased from getting trapped within. All silver and glassware has been put away. What remains is wood, lace, and silence. The widow, dressed in full mourning attire, sits in a high-backed chair near the hearth. Her dress is made of black bombazine, stiff and dull, designed to reflect no light. Her gloves are black, her veil is thick, her shoes black kid leather. For a full year She will wear this uniform of loss. She does not speak unless spoken to. Mourning in high society is not spontaneous. It is not personal. It is regulated, codified, a social system of grief. Etiquette books, thick volumes written by women for women, outline the proper schedule. Full mourning for 1 year, then half mourning for another 6 months, during which lavender and grey may be reintroduced. Jewellery is discouraged, except for pieces made from the hair of the deceased. The house reflects the same restraint. Servants walk softly, clocks are muffled, meals are plain, conversation, if it happens at all, avoids all mention of joy. Letters of condolence arrive, daily carefully written, delicately worded. Most are from people who did not know the man who died. That is beside the point. The ritual must be observed. Even the children wear black. Their play is quieter. Their shoes are polished. They do not ask when color will return. They are taught to wait. Funerals in these homes are not haphazard or hurried. They are arranged by professional undertakers with catalogues of coffin styles, mourning stationery, and horse-drawn carriages draped in black plumes. Invitations are sent. Attire is prescribed. Flowers are ordered, but not roses, unless white. The coffin is closed. The burial private. What follows is not an end, but the beginning of a long, slow performance. A year or more of subdued gatherings, whispered conversations, and careful observation of every outward sign of sorrow. But behind the crepe and the etiquette lies something quiet and real. Grief, pressed flat beneath manners. A widow staring into the fire, tea growing cold in her hand, children learning to behave before they understand why. A house echoing with the absence of footsteps that used to pass through the hall at precisely 8 each morning. This is grief in the world of polished shoes and lace handkerchiefs. It is elegant, restrained, and unbearably still. And so, from ritualized loss, we return again to motion, to grime, to hands stained not with ink or memory, but with ash and rust. The rhythm pulls us back down. Return now to the base of the city, to where the fires begin, to narrow flues and the smallest hands. This is not work. This is survival, done in darkness. You wake before dawn. The room you sleep in is small, shared with 5 other boys, all under 12. You sleep in a piled blankets, scarce warmth shared. The air smells of ash, sweat, and the strange metallic temps of burnt brick. The master sweep claps once. You rise immediately. No time for talk. He hands you a cloth sack and a short-handled brush. Your breakfast is a crust of bread, sometimes dipped in water, sometimes not. You walk barefoot. Your clothes are thin old linen and wool, patched and stiff. Your job is to climb into chimneys, up through the You are small, and that's what makes you useful. The first house is not far. A row house owned by a baker. The master knocks. The maid answers, points toward the hearth. You are already moving. You crawl into the firebox. It is cold for now. You curl your legs under you, press your back against one wall, and begin to climb, hands and feet on opposite sides, bracing, shuffling upward. It is pitch black inside. You can't see your hands. The soot clings to everything. It enters your mouth, coats your eyes, sticks behind your ears. You cough quietly. If you cough too loud, the master will beat you for scaring the client. The climb takes 5 minutes, sometimes 10. The flue is tight. You learn to breathe shallowly, to move slowly. A mistake could mean a fall, a slip, or worse, a flue too tight to pass, discovered too late. At the top, you brush the creosote from the crown. You let it fall. Then you slide back down, careful to keep your elbows tucked. At the bottom, the soot is gathered in a sheet and bundle. The next house is worse, a flue barely wider than your shoulders. The master tells you to skin your knees if you must. You do. The brickwork tears at your legs. Your shirt rides up. You come out bleeding. The day continues like this. House after house, chimney after chimney. No one looks you in the eye. They see the soot, not the boy. There are laws against this work now. The Chimney Sweepers Act was passed years ago. It requires that climbing boys be over 10, that they have proper clothing and time for church and school. But those are words on paper. In the alleys of Spitalfields and Southwark, they do not reach. The master drinks. He tells you it builds character. He gives you a coin at the end of the week. If you haven't complained, you tuck it into your shoe. You spit into a rag. It comes up dark. You sleep anyway. There is no choice. Some boys don't wake. Some get stuck. Others run away, only to return days later, beaten by cold and hunger. You think of running sometimes, but to where your hands are blackened, your fingernails chipped, your knees scabbed. You know the chimneys better than you know the sky. And still, each day, you climb from the flues and ash. Let us once again move outward, toward discovery, toward observation, toward the cold logic of excavation where bodies are not mourned but measured. We move now into the soil, into the record left by flesh and stone, into the hidden places where history settles quietly beneath the feet of the living. There is a patch of ground in Southwark not far from the hum of modern London traffic, known simply as Crossbones. Today it's fenced off, draped in ribbons, memorial plaques, and tokens, but in the 19th century it was something else entirely. The final resting place for those deemed unworthy of proper burial, the outcast dead. Imagine yourself walking through Southwark in 1850. The streets are slick with damp. A faint smell of rot lingers where the markets spill into alleyways. Off Red Cross Way, behind a row of ramshackle buildings, lies a field enclosed by rusted railings. There is no church, no headstones, no paths. This was once an unconsecrated burial ground first used for the so-called Winchester geese, women who worked in the nearby licensed brothels, and later the destitute poor, the unbaptized, the unnamed. By the Victorian period, the graveyard was a mass of shallow pits. Bodies were stacked, not laid, 4 or 5 to a grave, wrapped in old sheets, sometimes in nothing at all. The gravediggers worked quickly. There was no ceremony. Over time, the soil rose with the dead. By 1853, the graveyard was declared full and closed by the authorities for reasons of public health. It was too dangerous to continue. The ground had become unstable, the smell too strong, the risk of disease too high. But the story does not end there. In the 1990s, during construction of a new transit line, the site was excavated. What archaeologists found confirmed the whispered truths of the city's past. Layers upon layers of human remains. Skulls marked by signs of rickets, tuberculosis, and malnutrition. Children's bones, small and brittle, often laid beneath adults. Teeth worn down to the gums. One skeleton bore the remains of a tin brooch pinned to a strip of fabric. Another had a single glass bead nestled near the sternum. Simple tokens, quiet traces of lives now long gone. These were not criminals, not soldiers, not aristocrats. They were washerwomen, beggars, factory hands, and chimney boys. People whose names never made the paper. People whose graves bore no stone. The archaeologists worked slowly, carefully, and then they closed the pit again. The bones were the earth was leveled. Today, the Crossbones site stands quiet, It is not grand. There is no marble, but the gate is covered in offerings, ribbons, letters, small carved angels. People leave coins, dried flowers, names, scrawled in careful ink, a shrine to those once left behind. So when you imagine Victorian London, do not think only of soot and work and fire. Think of the earth beneath the boots, the bones beneath the market stalls, the quiet presence of those who lived, laboured, and vanished without record. They are there still, beneath the concrete and the hum of buses, beneath the city's pulse, and someone, finally, is remembering. Let us now rise, gently, into satin and glass, into parlours where grief is polished and death is managed. The contrast will sharpen softly, but it will hold. Step now into a different kind of ending, not mass graves or shared earth, but velvet-lined boxes, well-timed weeping, and men in tailored black. Here, even death obeys form. You stand beneath a high-arched portico in Kensington. The sky is grey, but the street is clear-swept just that morning. A line of carriages waits silently, the wheels polished, the horses draped in black, their hooves muffled with cloth. The man who has died was a banker, 58 years old, influential, though discreet. His accounts filled ledger pages. His name appeared in the Times twice. The notice of his death ran 3 columns, not because he was beloved, but because he mattered. Inside the drawing-room, the air smells of lilac and leather. The body lies in state. Not exposed, of course. The coffin is sealed, burnished wood with brass fittings. On the lid rests a wreath of white lilies, not a petal out of place. The mourning attire is flawless. The widow wears full crape, her face hidden beneath a veil that brushes the floor. Her gloves are buttoned, her corset tighter than usual, though she has barely eaten in 3 days. The daughters wear grey silk, the sons black frock coats. Everyone speaks in hushes, except the undertaker, whose instructions are low but firm. At exactly noon, the coffin is lifted for men in dark uniforms, white gloves. It is placed into the hearse, a black carriage with glass sides and silver ornamentation. The procession begins. Along the route, heads bow, hats are removed. Shopkeepers close shutters out of respect, not for the man himself, but for the ritual, for the role he played. At the cemetery, the service is brief. A vicar in crisp vestments reads from the Book of Common Prayer. The widow does not weep. That will come later, alone, if at all. Here, the tears must be controlled, delicate, composed, dignified. The coffin is lowered slowly. The ropes are clean, the grave lined with cedar planks. The stone will be set within the weak Italian marble, simple but elegant. The epitaph has already been selected by the family solicitor. Afterward, guests return to the house. Finger sandwiches, sherry, quiet music from a hired string duo. Conversation is polite, edged with propriety. The topic of death drifts in and out like a draught. The servants know their roles. The upstairs maid refreshes the glasses. The butler maintains the guest register. A young footman adjusts the fire twice, though no one notices. By evening, the house is cleared. The family retires. Mourning will continue for months, but the performance is complete. The banker has been buried as he lived, efficiently, elegantly, without fuss, and so, for those who lived in townhouses rather than tenements, death was not a disruption. It was a continuation. Another page in the ledger, another ritual to be managed. No buried scandal, no mystery, just an ending marked with correct grammar and folded linen. We return now to less polished ends, to lives that do not fit into ledgers, to the streets where grief does not wear gloves, and ritual is replaced by rhythm. We descend again into motion. into noise and cold fingers and coins that clink only when they must. Not quite poverty, not quite stability. A life lived one apple at a time. You rise while the streets are still dark, your breath fogging in the window pane. The city hasn't quite woken, but you must. The fruit must be bought before the others get there. Before the best apples are gone, you're a costermonger, part hawker, part tradesman, part performer. You sell what people eat when there's coin to spare. Apples, pears, potatoes, onions, things that bruise quickly, things that freeze if you don't cover them, things you push in a barrow down the spine of the East End. You wrap your hands in wool rags, not gloves you lost those last winter. The barrow's handle is splintered. You grip it anyway. The wheels squeak. You've packed your goods carefully. The better produce at the top, the soft ones buried below. By the time you reach the corner of Commercial Street, the market is already alive. Barrows jostling for space, voices bouncing off brick. Fine apples, 4 a penny, 3 onions for 2pence. You won't find better today. You take your pitch. You know the spot. Same one each morning, close enough to the pub to get foot traffic, far enough from the baker not to compete with the bread smells. You shout not angrily, but rhythmically. A chant, a melody of survival. It draws eyes. That's all it needs to do. Children linger nearby, fingering the edge of your cart. You watch them. Careful, but not unkind. They'll run off with a pair. If you turn your back, you would have too, once. The sales come slowly. A woman buys 6 potatoes and presses the coins into your hand like they're gold. A man with blackened fingers barters for a bruised apple. You let him have it. You know that kind of hunger. Sometimes you speak, more often you don't. The work is in watching, gauging the crowd, guessing how much you'll have left at the end of the day and how many cold hours still lie between now and then. Lunch is taken standing. A meat pie if you've done well, a crust of bread if you haven't. You eat with your free hand, your eyes still scanning. The other stays on the cart. The police pass. You nod. You're licensed, but barely. The inspector might ask to see your token, or he might ignore you, or fine you for being in the way. By mid-afternoon, your voice is hoarse. The wind bites. Your fingers ache. You begin marking down the prices. 2 for a penny. Then 3. You sell until the cart is light, then lighter, then empty enough to justify the walk back. And at the end of the day, you count your coins in a tin. You wrap the cart again in an old blanket, and you trudge back toward home. Tomorrow, you'll return to the market. Maybe earlier, maybe louder, maybe with better pears. It's not a job, it's not a trade, it's a tide. And each day, you float with a taw sink. We've seen the sellers, now let us drift to the stories of those who watched them, who chronicled the market's rhythm not for profit but for memory. Step now into careful footsteps, into observation framed not by curiosity or cruelty but by duty and by distance. Not quite part of the world she saw, but not entirely apart from it either. Her name was Mary Higgs, or perhaps Florence Hill, or maybe Octavia Hill. There were many like her, women of middle-class birth, educated, restrained, and concerned, women who walked into the slums not to scold, but to study, to record, to gently intervene. Imagine her, in the winter of 1891, walking through a narrow alley in Lambeth. She wears a dark wool coat. Her boots are polished, her gloves, carefully chosen, thin enough to write in, thick enough to keep out the filth. She carries a small notebook, the kind that fits in a coat pocket. In it, she scribbles quickly observations, snatches of overheard speech, the names of those she meets, not judgments, just records. Her task is complex. She is what the government has started calling a lady inspector, a relatively new invention. Her job is to report on conditions in workhouses, lodging homes, and women's shelters. But unlike her male colleagues, she's permitted access to spaces they cannot enter. She walks softly, listens carefully. In a lodging house for women, she notes the narrow cots, the stench of mildew, the absence of locks. A woman named Bess describes how her baby died last year and how she hasn't found regular laundry work since. Mary or Florence writes it down. She visits a bakery that allows women to sleep on its flour sacks after hours. She observes their faces in the firelight-lined, soot-streaked, hollow-eyed. She asks questions. What did you eat today? What did you pay for the bed? Have you seen the doctor? She makes no promises. She leaves no money, she writes. Later, in a private home, she transcribes her notes by candlelight. Her hand aches. Her tea has gone cold, she writes, without embellishment. 3 children in a room with 1 cot, one sleeping beneath the bed. Potatoes for supper, lice visible in the boy's collar. Her diary will not be published in her lifetime, but it will be passed on, quoted, referenced, used to guide reports and committees and debates. She is not a savior. She does not imagine herself one. She is not always welcomed. Some call her a spy. Others treat her as irrelevant. But still, she walks, day after day, alley after alley, because someone must bear witness. Her privilege protects her, but it does not blind her. Her gloves keep the filth off her skin but not out of her mind. In the end, her work shapes policy. Modestly, slowly, the design of shelters improves. A few more inspectors are hired, a few more women are heard, and long after she stops walking, her notes remain. The pages brown, the ink faded, but the stories, the small, unpolished stories are still legible. So when you picture a woman walking through the soot-dark lanes of London, her shoes too fine for the cobbles, her eyes steady, her hands clutching a notebook, know that she is not sightseeing. She is writing it down. Quietly, carefully, line by line. Now, from records and restraint, let us ascend once more into rooms where help is not needed and charity is a hobby, into the quiet ease of upper drawing rooms where discomfort never lingers. We rise, now not far in distance, but miles in meaning, into spaces where hardship is not lived but spoken of, where kindness is carefully wrapped in etiquette and help arrives through intermediaries, never hands. Imagine a drawing room in Bloomsbury around the year 1886. The ceiling is high. The wallpaper is pale green silk, framed by dark moulding. The fire in the hearth burns low, more for ambience than warmth. The woman of the house, Mrs. Eliza Stanhope's, in a wide chair upholstered in needlepoint. Her gloves are off, but her rings remain. She holds a china teacup, the rim touched with gold. She is hosting a meeting of the Ladies' Aid Society. The topic today is child labour in the East End. The ladies discuss it over scones and preserved quince. One has brought a newspaper clipping, an article about chimney sweeps. Another passes around a handbill for a fundraising event, an organ recital at St. Barnabas. The proceeds to benefit fallen women and destitute children. There is concern in their voices, genuine though muted. One suggests organizing a clothing drive. Another recommends petitioning the local member of parliament. A third recalls a particularly moving story she once heard about a shoeless boy in Wapping. No one remembers his name. They speak in soft noons, with frequent glances toward the grandfather clock. Time must be kept. The governess will expect the children for their reading lesson shortly. A maid enters to refill the teapot. She moves silently, professionally, She does not comment. She has family in Whitechapel. The ladies continue. One quotes Charles Dickens. Another mentions the work of Miss Octavia Hill. There is consensus that something must be done. Something proper. Something manageable. Perhaps a pamphlet or a subscription list. Outside, the street is clean and quiet. The noise of the city does not reach this far. Here, windows are floors are waxed. Every cushion is embroidered. Every discomfort, hunger, cold dirt is theoretical. The conversation shifts. Someone has seen a new painting in Soho depicting a beggar girl. Very affecting, they say. So haunting. They do not linger on the thought. The meeting ends with plans for a letter to the Times. And with that, gloves are donned, hats adjusted, and farewells exchanged. Polite, sincere, gentle. The house is quiet again. The tea is cleared. The maid resumes her duties. And in the East End, another boy begins sweeping a factory floor. Another girl lights a stove in a cellar kitchen. Another mother counts the day's coins. The ladies will not see them, but they will remember them briefly, distantly when next the society meets. Let us now descend again not into scorn or irony, but into noise, into breath, into work done not with plans or pamphlets, but with shoes worn thin and backs bent low. Back now to the street, or rather, below it, into a trade so foul it was rarely spoken of even by those who depended on it. Quiet, essential, and invisible. Like so much in the slums, it is nearly midnight. The city is still, except for the rustle of rats in alleyways and the dull hum of distant gas lamps. But your shift is just beginning. You are a night soil man. By daylight, the privies of East London look like any other feature of the slum's crumbling outhouses, tucked into corners behind tenements, rarely cleaned, barely ventilated, but by night, they are your domain. Your tools are simple. A pair of thick gloves, a pail, a ladle, and a cart fitted with heavy lids and iron wheels. You carry a lantern, not for comfort, but for necessity. The stench renders speech unnecessary. You are not welcome. People avoid your gaze, even when they see you coming. Some cross the street, others shut their windows in haste. But you do not mind. The work is clear, and there is always demand. You visit each assigned privisum, are wooden stalls shared by 3 families. Others just a pit behind a butcher's shop. You open the door, step inside, and begin the slow process of emptying, ladle by ladle, bucket by bucket, into the cart. There is no sewer connection, no running water. These are dry vaults, dug years ago, overflowing now from years of use. If left too long, they leak. If ignored, they collapse. You work methodically. With a practiced hand, you move from site to site, keeping track in your head. No clipboard, no orders, just routine. By 2 in the morning, the cart is nearly full. The air grows colder, which helps. You've stopped noticing the smell years ago. You hum sometimes softly, under your breath. A habit from childhood, something your mother sang while washing linen. You pass constables who do not stop you. They know your badge. You are tolerated, necessary, forgotten. The dumping ground is at the edge of the city, a stretch of waste ground behind a tannery, where the soil is black and nothing grows. You tip the contents into a trench, cover it with earth, mark the spot. Move on. There is no glory in this, no future. You will do this until your knees give out, or your lungs do. But tonight, the streets are quiet. The wheels of the cart groan against the cobbles. Your hands are stiff, your boots caked in filth. Still, you continue, because if you stop, the city will drown. They do not thank you, but they need you, and that, in its own way, is enough. Let us now turn from what lies beneath to what lies beyond, the strange, the unresolved, the questions still buried like bones, like stories, like silence. Step softly now into uncertainty, into the corners of history where names were not recorded, and stories end in ellipses. The slums did not just consume bodies, they swallowed memory. The year was 1871, near the bend of the Thames, where the river curves like a tightening noose. The fog had been heavy that morning, thick enough to choke the gas lamps, silent enough to dampen footsteps. A boy was found sitting on the stone steps behind the old prison, alone, wrapped in a coat too large for him, barefoot, mute. He had no name. The constable who found him noted his age as approximately 7. His hair was dark, his hands blistered, his feet swollen from cold. He did not speak. Not that day, not the next. There were no missing child reports matching his description, no parish records. No one at the nearby lodging houses recognized him. The newspapers ran a single line. An unknown boy discovered near Millbank. No injuries. Refuses speech. He was taken to the workhouse infirmary. Fed thin broth. Dressed in cotter smock and flannel. The attendants referred to him as that little one. The register listed him simply as boy, name unknown. Over the weeks that followed, he made no sound. He did not cry. He did not laugh. He seemed to understand commands. He followed instructions. He ate when fed. One nurse claimed he spoke a single word once, home, but no one else heard it. Speculation grew. Was he the child of a prostitute, abandoned to the river's edge? A runaway from a travelling show? A servant's child lost in the fog? One matron believed he had been dropped from a carriage. Another swore he resembled the son of a man who'd been hanged the year before. There were theories, but no answers. Eventually, the boy was sent to a residential home for He was given a new name, Samuel, after the chaplain who arranged the transfer. His surname changed 3 times over the next 2 years, depending on the institution. No one ever claimed him. He was just one child among thousands, but his silence lingered. The way he sat still for hours, the way he avoided the firelight, the way he flinched at bells. Then, one day, he vanished from the records. There was no death notice, no transfer slip, simply gone. Perhaps he was sent overseas, or adopted informally, or perhaps the books were mislaid, as so many were. All that remains is the single entry in the constable's logbook. Boy unnamed, approx. 7, found Millbank steps, silent, and so, like so many lives in the margins of Victorian London, his story ends not with a conclusion but with quiet. A boy in the fog, alone, still unnamed. We return now to clarity, not in the facts, but in contrast. From the unclaimed to the overdocumented, from the child in rags to the child in silk. Now rise once more, not dramatically, but gently, into a world softened by curtains and supervised by staff. The child here is not forgotten, but surrounded, protected, watched. Imagine a tall townhouse in Mayfair. 4 floors, clean white stone, a wrought iron gate. Inside, a wide staircase curves upward toward the top floor, where children live not in fear, but in structure. You're in the nursery. It is warm, always warm. A coal fire glows behind a tall guard. The walls are pale blue, dotted with framed illustrations. On the mantel sits a porcelain clock, its ticking barely audible beneath the distant sound of carriage wheels outside. The child here is 4 years old. His name is Edward, or James, or Charles. He wears a sailor suit with polished buttons. His boots are scuffed, but cleaned nightly by the maid. His hands are soft, his belly full. His nurse, always called nurse, never by her given name, sits nearby, darning socks. She speaks gently, but with authority. She has been with the family longer than the boy has been alive. Breakfast is porridge with cream. Lunch is cold chicken, sliced fruit, and a boiled sweet. Everything is measured. Meals occur at set hours. There are no surprises. The day is structured. There is playtime with a wooden horse, a picture book imported from Germany, a spelling lesson overseen by a governess, a brief walk, only if it's not too damp. Outside, children the same age chase carts in bare feet and dig through refuse for scrap. But here the world is narrowed to 4 walls, velvet curtains, and the scent of beeswax and camphor. When the boy cries, nurse picks him up, not with panic, but practiced care. She hums something simple, a lullaby passed down from another nursery, in another house, on another quiet street. Illness, when it comes, is met with boiled linens, warm flannels, and a house call from the family physician. He arrives with a leather bag, asks polite questions, writes careful notes. The boy sleeps with a hot water bottle at his feet and a glass of cordial on the bedside table. Birthdays bring gifts wrapped in silk paper, wooden soldiers, silver rattles, painted puzzles. They are treasured, but replaceable. His parents visit at set times before dinner, or on Sundays after church. They ask about his reading. They smile and pat his head. He stands when they enter. He is taught to nod, to speak clearly, to eat with the correct fork. And when night comes, nurse draws the curtains. She dims the lamps. She reads a story, something about kings or animals that speak. The boy yawns. He sleeps in a proper bed, under embroidered sheets. He dreams of nothing troubling, and so the child upstairs lives in a world where pain is abstract, hunger is a word in a book, and cold is something kept on the other side of the window. He will grow, he will study, he may become a man of politics, or letters, or law. He will never know the name of the boy found in the fog. He will never ask. From soft beds and clean floors, let us fall once more into motion, into noise, into a life measured in steps taken, not choices made. Return now to the edge of the street, not quite work, not quite begging, somewhere between effort and endurance, a job not granted, but claimed, 1 square foot at a time. You stand on a corner in Holborn. It's just after sunrise. The morning fog has begun to lift, but the streets are still slick with filth, horse droppings, spilled ale, yesterday's soup. The carriages will start to pass soon, and you must be ready. You hold a broom, homemade. The bristles are worn unevenly, tied together with wire and string. You've swept this same crossing for months now. You've earned the space by persistence alone. There's no license, no pay, just position. Your job is to clear a small stretch of road no more than 3 feet wide between the pavement and the street. You keep it as clean as you can. Not pristine, not perfect, just enough for the boots of ladies and gentlemen to pass, without soiling the hems of their coats and skirts. Some toss you a coin, a farthing, a halfpenny. Others ignore you. Some nod, others sneer. You don't speak unless spoken to. You say thank you with a slight bow. You don't ask for more. Children laugh at you. Street boys call you brush-bottom. One once spat at your boots. You didn't react. They move on faster when ignored. You wear the same coat every day, once dark, now faded to a dull grey-brown. It barely fits. You've stitched the sleeves yourself. Your boots are mismatched, one lined with straw. You wear a scarf, not for warmth, but to hide the smell of the street. Sometimes, in winter, the sweep freezes. You chip at the edges with your broom handle. In summer, it becomes sludge. Either way, you keep sweeping. There are others like you. Boys, old men, women with scarves wrapped over their heads, sweeping silently near the bakeries or outside theatres. You nod at one another, but rarely speak. Territory is fragile. Conversation makes it softer. At midday, you eat bread, a scrap of cheese, water, if there's a pump nearby that hasn't frozen. You sit on the curb, broom across your knees, and watch the boots go by, shined, clean, expensive. On good days, you collect enough to eat well. On bad days, not enough to eat at all. You don't think of the future. There is only the next pair of boots, the next clink of copper, the next cloud of dust to push away. And when the light begins to dim, when the traffic thins and the shopkeepers close their shutters, you take your broom and tuck it under your coat. You walk back to your corner of the world. A doorway, a shared room, a bench if it's dry. Tomorrow you will return and sweep and nod and wait. It is not work that lifts. It is not work that lasts. But it is work that keeps you moving. And now, let us step into silence once more. Not into labor or dirt, but into ink and structure, into the rarefied stillness of controlled knowledge and carefully folded linen. We climb again, not in noise or haste, but through doors that open without knocking, into rooms where decisions are made slowly over sherry, where knowledge is arranged on shelves, and silence is a sign of control, not absence. The room is long, lined with dark wood. The windows face west, their curtains drawn just enough to filter the light into something soft and golden. The scent is unmistakable old leather, wax polish, tobacco faint in the rugs. You are in a gentleman's library. This is not a public reading room or a borrowed bookshop. This is private. It belongs to a man of means, perhaps a barrister, perhaps a member of parliament, or a colonial investor returned from India. The books are bound in calfskin, their spines embossed in gold. Gilt edges catch the light. Nothing here is recent, nothing is unconsidered. There are volumes on Roman law, natural history, political economy. There are maps hand-coloured, carefully rolled, showing territories that stretch far beyond England's foggy shores. The man who owns the room sits in a leather armchair. He reads slowly, with a glass of port in one hand and his other hand resting lightly on a closed ledger. His hands are clean, fingernails trimmed. His cuffs are starched. He is not idle. This is how he works. Through thought, through reading, through quiet decisions that ripple outward into the lives of people he will never meet. On a small side table is a stack of correspondence. One letter concerns a factory in the north. Another speaks of slum clearance in Whitechapel. A third discusses tariffs in the colonies. He reads them all, marks them with a faint pencil tick, then files them away. There is no hurry. The pace here is deliberate. Time is an asset, not a threat. A clock ticks softly on the mantel. A maid enters briefly, places a small silver tray of biscuits, and disappears. She does not speak. She is not expected to. On the walls hang portraits of ancestors in powdered wigs and red military coats. None smile. They do not need to. In this space, knowledge is currency. But it is stored, not spent, displayed, not deployed. Books may be opened, but not often. Some have not moved from their shelf in years, yet their presence matters. They speak to order, to legacy, to ownership of thought. Outside, the street is quiet. The slums are only a mile away, but they might as well be another world. The man reads a final paragraph, closes the book, and leans back. He is satisfied. He has understood something. That is enough. He will dine later. A roast, perhaps. A discussion of affairs. A walk in the garden, if the weather permits. but for now he remains in this room. Surrounded by books he has chosen, in silence he has earned, and in the city beyond, people sweep, scrape, dig, shout, and bleed. He hears none of it. The contrast is sharp, but the transition will be soft. Let us descend again, this time into laughter, into clatter, into chaos, into the world where sleep comes not from comfort, but from collapse. Now return. Down from the armchairs and polished floors, back to the brick and stink and breathing walls, into the slum's final refuge. A place to lie down, if not to rest. The room is small, 15 feet long, 10 wide. The walls are damp, streaked with soot. There is one window, nailed shut. The glass is cracked, the sill black with mold. A single candle flickers on a shelf, its flame tiny against the dark. You share this space with 11 others. Some are asleep already, curled on straw mats or hunched in chairs. Others cough quietly. One whispers to himself. Another drinks from a paper-wrapped bottle, the liquid foul-smelling, the sound of the swallow sharp in the silence. You are in a common lodging house. You paid a penny to get into if you wanted a blanket. The keeper took your coin without looking. He does not care who you are. He only cares that you leave when the bell rings. The room smells of sweat, smoke, and something metallic. Feet, piss, damp wool, rotten food in a corner that no one claims. The air is heavy, hard to breathe. You keep your mouth shut, but your lungs sting anyway. There are no beds, just planks nailed to the walls, mats thrown across the floor, old crates repurposed as stools. Some lie side by side, others curl into themselves, trying not to touch. You lie down slowly. Your body aches, not from one injury, but from many small one-scraped fingers, tired joints, cold toes. There is no privacy. The man beside you snores. The girl across the room mutters in her sleep. A child barely 5 curls against his mother's back like a kitten. She has her arm draped over him protectively. She's missing 2 fingers. The walls groan with the weight of damp. The ceiling drips from somewhere you can't see. Outside, a dog barks. Somewhere nearby, someone sings a few slurred lines of a song, then stops. You clutch your coat to your chest. It doesn't help much, but it keeps your arms from shivering too visibly. There is no fire, no warmth, only closeness, shared heat, the knowledge that you are not alone. That may be the only comfort. No one talks. Talking costs too much. You sleep when you can, lightly, one eye half open. Your boots stay on. You've lost 2 pairs already. At dawn, the bell will ring. You'll be roused, whether rested or not. The keeper will come with a stick. No one stays past sunrise. The room must be emptied, swept, briefly aired, then filled again with the next dozen who can pay. But for now, you lie still, listening to breath, counting coughs, letting your mind drift toward something, anything other than where you are. It is not rest, it is pause. And for many, that's the most they'll ever get. Let us now rise, just slightly, not into splendor, but into regulation, into the systems that attempted, however imperfectly, to contain the city's collapse. We do not rise far, only across the street, from a place where coins bought sleep, to a place where dignity bought food, slowly now, into the system meant to help and to punish. You stand in a long hallway, your boots caked with mud, your coat soaked from the drizzle. In front of you, a small desk. Behind it, a clerk with a ledger, a pen, and eyes that do not rise to meet yours. You are applying for relief. The workhouse looms behind him, an austere building of brick and iron, its windows tall and narrow, its gates always locked. There is no sign, no welcome, only regulation. You give your name, you answer the questions. Age, occupation, parish of birth. You are not expected to lie, but you are not expected to explain either. The pen scratches across the page. You are handed a token, a room assignment, a set of instructions. You surrender your clothes, your belt, your shoelaces. You are given a uniform, rough cloth, clean but coarse, identical to every other man's. You are now not yourself. You are an inmate. The day begins early. 5 in the morning. The bell rings and all rise. Breakfast is porridge. No sugar, no butter, no choice. You eat in silence, in rows. A warder watches, a spoon drops, and no one moves to pick it up. After breakfast, you are assigned labor. If you are strong enough, it is stone breaking. If not, oakum picking and raveling old rope into fibers, used to seal ship hulls and roofs. If you are too weak to work, you are sent to the infirmary, where the cold settles into the bones of the forgotten. You are not permitted to speak during labor. You may hum quietly. You may cough once, but talk earns reprimand. Reprimand earns punishment. The hours are long, the breaks short, the toilets shared, the beds hard, straw on boards, with one blanket. You are not permitted to leave unless discharged officially. You may apply to go, but you may not walk out. The gates are locked from the outside. Men and women are separated. Children, too. You may see your wife from across the chapel aisle, but you may not speak to her. Your children are housed in another wing. You may hear them laughing briefly, then they are gone. Some enter the workhouse for warmth in winter, for bread when there is nothing else. Others come broken by drink, by illness, by debt. Some never leave. The matron runs her wing like a barracks. The master runs his like a factory. Everything is accounted for. Every pound of flour, every inch of cloth, every soul. At night, you lie on your board, staring up at the rafters. The man beside you wheezes in his sleep. A rat skitters across the floor. Somewhere, a pipe leaks steadily. You will eat again in the morning, and work again. And in the silence of your body, in the weight of your limbs, you begin to understand why they call this place the last resort. Not because it saves, but because it waits. We leave now this institution, not with hope, but with distance, back into the world where rooms have heat, and help comes in the form of dinner invitations rather than group. Ascend again, this time into warmth, into a world of polished boots and carved staircases, a place where hardship is invisible and power is exercised over soup. You step into a house lit by gas, sconces low and golden, casting long shadows on the flocked wallpaper. The hallway smells of beeswax and roast meat. A butler takes your coat with practiced silence. The host is an industrialist, cotton mills in the north, coal shares in Wales, a seat on 2 boards. His fortune was made not by invention, but by ownership. He is 56, soft around the edges, dressed in a dark frock coat and freshly starched collar. Dinner is served precisely at 7. You enter a dining room of mahogany and marble, where 10 guests sit along a long table adorned with silver and crystal. The centerpiece is floral, imported, the napkins folded into crisp fans. The conversation is smooth, practiced. Topics range from the upcoming exhibition to parliamentary gossip to a minor scandal involving a railway extension. No one speaks of labor. No one mentions smoke. The food is flawless. Clear broth with sherry to start, then roast beef, thick and pink, with horseradish and potatoes roasted in goose fat, a fish course, a salad, a tart of apples so sweet they must have been shipped from somewhere sunnier. The servants glide in and out like ghosts. Your host smiles often, but speaks sparingly. When he does, it is to ask about tariffs, or taxes, or the weather in France. He does not mention the factories. He does not need to. You sip claret from cut glass and notice the paintings on the wall. One of Venice, one of a Scottish stag hunt, none of the city, none of the street. Later, over port and cigars in the drawing room, the host finally mentions his business. The new machine has increased output threefold, he says. Of course, there's some unrest in the ranks, but they're manageable. He says this without malice, without triumph, as though describing a tool that needs oiling. The others nod. One speaks of new ventilation in his plant to reduce the coughing. Another grumbles about the inspectors. More paperwork every year. The night winds down slowly. One by one, guests retire. The house quiets. The servants extinguish lamps. The butler checks the front locks. And upstairs, in a bedroom warm with cold heat, the industrialist prepares for bed. He removes his watch, loosens his cuffs, reads a few pages of a novel, something French, something dull. He yawns. Outside, on the same street, a costermonger sleeps beneath his cart. A match girl picks at her blistered fingers. A boy cries out in his sleep in a room with no window. But here, in the stillness of wealth, none of it reaches. The curtains are thick, the dreams are undisturbed, and the illusion of control remains unbroken. We return now, one last time, to the bricks and smoke, to the people who lived lives not recorded in ledgers, but remembered in the shape of their days. The rhythm continues. No home, no shop, just a voice, a rhythm, and a hunger that hums between the notes. You don't sing for joy. You sing to be heard, just long enough to eat. You stand at the edge of the road in Shoreditch. It's just after midday. The fog has lifted, but the air is still thick with chimney smoke. You clear your throat. The first sound scrapes out like gravel. You sing anyway. Your voice is worn raspy, sometimes cracked but strong enough to carry. You've memorized a dozen ballads. Some are old sailor songs, some borrowed from music halls. One or two you wrote yourself, though you don't tell anyone that. You sing with your hat on the ground in front of you, a threadbare cap with a torn brim. There are already 2 pennies inside. One is real, the other you placed there yourself. The street moves around, wheelbarrows rattling past, boots clapping over stone, children shrieking in play or protest. But some stop to listen. A woman with a basket, a man rolling a cigarette, a child who stares wide-eyed, mouth slightly open. Your voice weaves through the noise. The songs aren't cheerful. One is about a mother who lost her child to fever, another about a sailor dashed against the rocks. But people drop coins for those, not the happy tunes. They want sorrow. They understand it. Sometimes you carry papers, printed ballad sheets, sold for a halfpenny apiece, lyrics printed in crooked lines, adorned with a woodcut image of a weeping girl or a storm-tossed ship. You sell them by hand, your fingers ink-stained, your palms always open. When your voice gives out, you drink water, or tea, if someone gives you any, sometimes gin, just enough to keep the notes loose. You don't sing for applause. There is none. You don't sing for passion. You left that behind years ago. You sing because it fills the air around you with something other than silence. And because silence does not buy bread, you've been chased off before. A constable once kicked over your hat. Another told you to move on. Your voice was low class. You moved, but you returned. The city has thousands of singers. Men, women, children. Some carry, but most just sing and hope. You end your day hoarse, your throat raw. You count your coins carefully in a corner. 8 pence, enough for food, maybe a bunk in a warm room. If you get there before it fills, you don't dream of stages. You dream of silence, the kind that doesn't come with hunger. But tomorrow you'll sing again, because the voice, even broken, still carries. And for a moment, while the notes linger in the air, you feel like you exist. From voice to memory, from survival to reflection, we approach the final turns now into recollection, into the long breath of understanding what all of this meant and why it still matters. Now we stand, still not as participants, but as witnesses. The rooms are empty. The fire has gone cold, but the walls remember, and they whisper quietly to those who know how to listen. It is the early 20th century. The reformers have come. The cameras, the notebooks, the white-gloved inspectors. Slum clearance has begun. You walk into the last tenement still standing on a particular street in Bethnal Green. The others are already rubble. This one waits, barely upright. You step through a crooked doorway, your boots crunching over broken plaster and shattered slate. The smell lingers. Old soot, stale water, iron and dust. The kind of scent that never truly leaves a wall. The rooms are empty, but not silent. You see a scorch mark in the shape of a kettle, a child's drawing on the underside of a stair, a single broken comb resting on a sill, each fragment a sentence, each shadow a name. Here, someone washed clothes in a tin tub. There, a girl pressed her face to the cracked glass, watching the rain pool in the alley below. In that corner, someone coughed through a long night and did not wake up. The floorboards creak with every step. The wallpaper peels in layers brown, then blue, then pale green beneath, as though the building itself has been trying to change its skin. On the mantel, a nail still protrudes. A place where a coat once hung, or a rosary, or a key to something now long rusted shut. You walk up the narrow stairs, one step at a time. The banister is smooth, worn by 1,000 palms. There are names scratched into the wall. Alfie, Maud, Len. The dates are unclear. The letters shaky. In the back room, the window has no glass. A bird has nested on the sill. Feathers mingle with bits of cloth. Life goes on. In small ways, there is no furniture, but there is memory in the shape of the walls. The slant where a bed once leaned, the patch of brick blackened by an old stovepipe, the nail holes left behind by picture frames, or string, or wire. Outside, the city has changed. The horses replaced. The factory's gone, the gaslight's dark, but inside this tenement, something remains. A hum beneath the plaster, a pulse in the brick. These were not places of romance. They were places of survival, and yet they held laughter, births, secrets, love, sometimes all wrapped in hardship. Soon this building will fall. The papers have been signed. The bricks will be hauled off. A plaque may be installed. A line in a report will mark its passing. But you're standing here now in the quiet. Understand something those reports will miss. The slum was not just a condition. It was a shape, a rhythm, a life lived in inches, and for a moment, with your hand on the wall, you feel it breathing still. We come now to the end. One last contrast. One final room, and then rest. And now we return not to the slums, not to the soup, but to where you are now. Still, warm, clean. You have made this journey not to suffer, but to understand. And from understanding, let the body soften into sleep. You lie in your bed. The room around you is quiet. The sheets are clean. The mattress supports you fully. You are alone, or perhaps beside someone you love. The air is calm. the silence complete. There is no coal smoke creeping under the door, no cries from the alley, no boots stomping on ceiling boards above. Your floor is solid, your windows intact. If you turn your head, you see electric light or moonlight, or only the gentle glow of a clock. There is no bucket to empty, no stranger beside you, no lice, no mold, no waking to the bark of a constable or the breath of cold on your toes. Your hands are not blistered, your stomach is not hollow. You did not carry coal today. You did not lose a child. You did not climb a chimney. You did not sweep a street for coins. You are here, and the past is there, separated not by time alone, but by comfort, by security, by luck. The people you've met tonight trail, though unnamed, dressed, now in memory, in old photographs, in census lists, in bones beneath new buildings. Their stories echo, not to haunt, but to remind, that the world was once heavier, that life, for many, was a series of cold mornings and long walks toward nothing certain, and that you, tonight, have something they did not. Time, safety, sleep. So breathe in, slowly, let your shoulders loosen, let your chest rise and fall. The voices fade now, the brick crumbles into shadow, the fog lifts, the soot clears. You are not in Whitechapel or Shoreditch or Clerkenwell. You are not cold, you are not watched. You are simply here, still, and the rhythm of their lives gives way now to the rhythm of your own breath, in, out, still.